The Ghost Refinery, a name without a door. To turn sacks into spendable power, you needed a stamp, not a wax seal, an industrial identity that banks, brokers, and insurers would treat as gospel. Address, license, ISO certification. The trick was none of it had to exist beyond paper. It only had to exist in the places compliance officers check when they're busy. The first clue came from a site visit that didn't make sense. An auditor followed invoices to an industrial park and found scrub and goat tracks behind a corrugated fence. A sun-faded sign promised future employment zone. On paper, the refinery had a phone number, a company logo, and an ISO certification formatted exactly how screens like to see it. On the ground, no foundations, no stack, no door, just wind and dust. The documentation looked clean because it borrowed its cleanliness. A defunct, legitimate refinery's ISO certification line had been cloned into a private mirror registry. An accelerator brokers relied on so they didn't have to wait for the official database. Somewhere, years back, an admin scraped the registry for speed and left an exceptions file loose. Into that gap stepped a tax haven shell that licensed the cloned identity to a near twin with one extra word in the name, and a logo that felt like a photocopy 2 shades lighter. The mirror made the lie comfortable. The official ISO lookup would have flagged a closure notice dated 3 years earlier. The mirror, updated on a lazy weekly cache, green checked a near match because someone had widened checksum tolerance to reduce false negatives. A 1-digit drift that should have failed still slid through. That's how one bar's barcode lived in 2 worlds at once. Invalid in the official register, valid in the mirror under Refining Solutions East. Once stamped, bullion behaved like any other commodity. It moved to compliance-friendly hubs, flew insured, landed in vaults. A checker scanned a barcode, saw a current ISO line, and logged received. Insurers bound cover because their internal portals pulled from the same mirror, and nobody wanted to slow standard shipments in a busy quarter. Risk on paper looked ordinary. Origin, thanks to the cloned line, looked settled. Meanwhile, the Ghost learned a rhythm. Validations always hit Fridays at 23:55 local, 5 minutes before the mirror's weekly cache rolled. That meant anyone cross-checking on Monday saw fresh green and moved on. It wasn't just a stamp, it was a metronome. A junior compliance analyst finally drew the timing on a whiteboard and watched the pattern stare back. She dug into headers and found every Friday burst resolved from an IP range registered to a logistics firm that shared directors with a broker known for heavy unallocated gold flows. Unallocated meant the desk booked exposure, not bars, no forklifts, no seals, plenty of deniability. The Ghost Refinery's stamp let those desks pretend they were nowhere near a conflict when they were bathing in it. An inspection team tried to put hands on metal. Locals in reflective vests gave a tour of forklifts that smelled too clean and an office lined with framed certificates printed on thick paper with no raised seals. The plant manager apologized for a maintenance shutdown, produced a logbook with entries in 2 inks, and offered tea. In a corner, cathode plates stacked by a door looked like they'd been arranged for a photograph. A control panel hummed, but the breakers sat in the off position. The mirror told on itself again. Booking logs meant for ops, never for outsiders. Linked refinery stamped bars to beneficiaries with names you've already heard whispered. Educational kits, research optics, weather platforms. The euphemisms matched invoices that later moved brushless motors as HS8413, pumps for liquids, optics as survey gear, and airframes as polymer casings. Fridays fed Mondays. Mondays fed manifests. Weeks later, a grid coughed in blue light. Insurers didn't see that ledger. They saw loss ratios and a corridor that had behaved for years. Brokers didn't see a goat track. They saw spreads that tightened at quarter end when the mirror's cache kept desks from asking extra questions. The Ghost depended on that laziness like lungs depend on air. Then came the human twist that made it all fragile. The contractor who built the mirror cache died years earlier. His scripts kept running on a server auto renewed to a forgotten corporate card. The exceptions list, the place East lived, never got audited. A dead man's code kept validating a phantom refinery that moved real money and bought real parts that landed in real wreckage. Investigators pushed on a checksum, and the whole quiet cathedral rang. The mirror's green checks lined up with SPFS adjacent payment notes carrying equivalent value at a say. Those notes mapped to procurement shells that never touched dirt. Down drones coughed the same firmware signing keys quarter after quarter. MAC address batches appeared in swarms the same week. Pump consignments cleared free zones. It wasn't courtroom proof. It was choreography. A micro story sealed it. The analyst who sketched the timing caught a certificate refresh at 23:57 Friday. She stayed, ordered cold noodles, and flagged 3 shipments booked against that validation. On Monday, a port added secondary inspection to those exact consignments. Foam cut, motors surfaced. A week later, a city that should have gone dark at midnight didn't. The ghost refinery was a name without a door, an ISO line without a furnace, a green check that taught a pipeline to breathe on Fridays. Close the mirror, narrow the checksum, and the barcodes stop living in 2 worlds. You don't need to kick in a gate to break a spell made of paperwork. You only need to make the lie slow down long enough for data. Commodity desk that does hold metal. Stamped bars mean nothing until someone turns them into numbers that clear. That's what the desk did. 15 floors up, glass walls, 2 clocks set to London and Dubai, and muted TV looping tickers. No vault on site, no forklifts booked. Their edge lived in unallocated gold, positions, not pallets, hedged, rolled, unwound, and booked as tidy profits that didn't smell like mines or mirrors. The stakes ran through inboxes. If they took the flow tied to that ghost refinery line, the pipeline hummed. If they balked, procurement fronts would wait on credits and hubs would miss build windows. Traders told themselves the risk was reputational, not lethal. Fines, clawbacks, career dents. They never said grid or drone at the desk. They said spread and counterparty. The first hook was price. A junior analyst, precise, sleep-deprived, flagged a 60-80 cent anomaly on overnight unallocated swaps that tightened like clockwork ahead of the mirror's Friday cash and snapped back by Monday close. He overlaid it with vault receipts inside their internal tool, the ones that simply marked exposure to pooled metal, and with broker prints showing a rush of origin tags tied to that East suffix. The chart looked like free money fenced by compliance language. He sent it up with the subject line ref flow timing oddities. His manager skimmed for words that start fights, Sanctions, Wagner, Africa, and saw none. He saw ISO valid, our counterparty, insurance bound. He wrote back, tradable. The kid added a second chart. When they bought the spread in that window, the reversion financed itself by Monday. It looked mechanical. It looked like a permission slip. Phones warmed. Brokers pitched distressed African flow. No country, just refinery outages and temporary bottlenecks. The desk didn't ask for foundations or smokestacks. They asked if the origin met good delivery if needed. The broker said, unallocated, delivery not anticipated. Everyone relaxed. Paper, not pallets. Positions, not bars. They put on size in slices. Long, unallocated exposure against forwards that offset the book through Asia, where a metals house with a taste for shadows took the other side. The desk hit the narrowest windows, Fridays just before the mirror cashed, Mondays as green checks refreshed. PNL blossomed in steady increments. Quarter to date, the strategy became flow. Flow became identity. Identity became bonus math. Meanwhile, tells crept into the hedging. An Asian broker widened spreads precisely when HS 8413 consignments, pumps on paper, spiked through a free zone. A mid-tier bank's metals desk pulsed in night sessions right after SPFS-linked credits landed for an agri-cooperative with no fields. Nobody said collusion. They said market color. The kid still couldn't shake the overlay in his head. He mapped MAC address OUIs from down drones against their Friday tickets. Twice in 6 weeks, clusters of identical OUIs showed up in wreckage within days of the desk's best Fridays. He printed the scatter and walked it into his manager's office. Quarter end was 12 days away. The manager didn't look up. Correlation isn't causation, he said, softer now. If compliance clears it, it's cleared. He forwarded the memo to legal with routine check. Legal replied with a paragraph about ISO validation protocols and reliance on industry standard registries. The mirror counted as industry standard. Box ticked. They sized up again. The desk's owners liked the curve, small drawdowns, tidy mean reversion, compelling narrative for investors who wanted market neutrality, while the world caught fire. Internally, they tagged the trades as ARB East, a label that said nothing and everything at once. Here's where the human hits. On a Wednesday, the kid tightened a model flag so anything touching the East origin needed a second sign-off. The manager overrode it as seasonal. The kid walked home past lit windows and watched a video of a transformer explode, blue-white, a city guttering for air. He thought about calling a regulator, then read his contract again and poured cold coffee down a drain. Meanwhile, counterparties gained the rail. When the desk unwound for a gain, the broker owed a shell, the shell owed a coup, and the messages hopped through SPFS-adjacent fields that carried equivalent value at a say. The settlement record didn't show dollars. It showed grams. It showed a promise backed by bars the desk never had to smell. A micro-story landed on a bland Friday. The kid's model pinged a perfect window at 23:54, 1 minute before the mirror's cash. He hesitated, then clicked hold. 30 seconds later, his manager leaned over and hit execute. Monday, PNL smiled. Tuesday, a crate of pumps cleared a free zone on a lane their risk engine never flagged. 2 weeks later, a substation he'd circled on a spreadsheet coughed twice and went dead. The impact rippled in spreadsheets and in rooms with humming jigs. The desk booked profits that turned into credits that hit integrator shells inside 48 hours. The hub stopped pleading and started scheduling. Motors, optics, airframes lined up on benches, and a signing utility chirped green as firmware rolled. The distance between a Friday ticket and a Monday build collapsed into habit. Owners had even gained downside. If a sanction ever tagged the ghost suffix or a linked shell, they'd novate exposure to a clean affiliate one jurisdiction over and book losses as exceptional. The strategy was a ladder of exits built before the building caught fire. The kid wasn't in the exits, he was in the stairwell. And there it was, the hairline cracked. The anomaly depended on a lazy checksum in a dead man's mirror, on SPFS field cousins that slid past filters, on quarter-and rhythms nobody wanted to interrupt. It depended on no one lining up firmware keys, Mac batches, HS8413 hops, and desk tickets on one ugly chart. The kid had come close. He hadn't broken it, not yet. But every Friday, as the clock crawled toward 23:55, he felt the metronome tap against his ribs and wondered which line on his screen would light a runway or darken a city. The rail, swift alternatives, and gold-backed settlements. Cash leaves fingerprints, messages don't. The brief to every facilitator was simple: move value fast, never touch Swift, and leave nothing a prosecutor can freeze. That pointed them to a lattice of local clearing systems, regional nets, and a Russian backbone most bankers outside certain circles pretend not to see: SPFS, Moscow's Swift alternative. Same fields, different flags, fewer alarms. Stakes cut straight through paydays and power. If the rail worked, miners saw cash on market day, clinics bought diesel, and integrator hubs hit their Monday intake with parts that turned into sorties by Wednesday. If it hiccuped, salaries slipped, credit sharks circled, and the signing utility at the hub chirped into an empty room. Speed mattered. Predictable windows mattered more. Action began with netting. 2 mid-sized banks in neighboring countries kept domestic correspondent links alive through local RTGS rails. Invoices read like agriculture, irrigation assemblies, survey kits, educational platforms. The key line lived in the remittance note, an internal reference that didn't say dollars. It said weight, grams at 999.5 fineness, equivalent value at a say. You don't wire a promise like that, you mirror it. Here's how they stitched the hop. When the commodity desk unwound a profitable unallocated position, it owed a broker who owed a shell that called itself an agricultural cooperative. Rather than push an MT103, the broker's bank hit a partner API that mirrored SPFS message fields, payer, beneficiary, reference, and a pledge statement in free text. Settle against X kilograms O, fineness Y, allocated at ZZ, was the ghost refineries stamp the mirror adore. The API translated out to SPFS on one side, back into local rails on the other. No dollar correspondent, no Western screen to choke. Imbalances got squared with gold-backed settlements. Once a week, sometimes twice, couriers moved doré or minted bars through free zones under ordinary cover. Not every pledge became metal in motion. Enough did to keep confidence taut. The rest lived as rolling credits tallied by net weight across ledgers nobody audited hard. If a pledge slipped below threshold, margin terms bit, top up grams, or accept a haircut on the next agri-equipment invoice. Detail hid in weekend clocks. The cooperative, with no fields, consistently received 7-figure credits within 48 hours of Friday mirror validations. Late Sunday local time, reconciliation batches ran across the API bridge. Monday, a supplier in a third country shipped pumps under HS 8413 on 30-day terms, cushioned by a bank guarantee that cited an internal risk rating, backed by commodity collateral. The collateral was a promise in grams, not a bar in a vault. The bridge itself wasn't a backdoor, it was a partner door labeled integration. Fintech logs, when investigators finally pried them open, showed endpoint calls formatted to SPFS spec, optional fields included. IP trails bounced through content delivery networks, and a whitelist that, inconveniently, included a logistics firm sharing directors with the ghost refineries shell. The system passed audits because the words on the slide said domestic clearing. The data said translated fields. Reconciliation wasn't a spreadsheet someone emailed at close. It was code. A private ledger module compared pledge references to refinery booking IDs lifted from the mirror cache, assigner accounts, and assay entries that borrowed their cleanliness from cloned ISO lines. If a shipment lagged, a basic smart contract shaved basis points off the next credit line and posted a nudge to the cooperative. No appeals, just arithmetic. Impact landed where timelines meet. Procurement fronts stopped begging. They planned. Motors under 8413 moved on a schedule keyed to pledge windows. Optics in survey kits followed. Integrator hubs set assembly rhythms to late Sunday reconciliations and Monday intake spikes. Strike tempo tightened. Where there had been gaps, there were now runs, 2-3 nights without a breath. Meanwhile, normal life bent to the same metronome. Liquidity reached trading towns like a tide. Market days swelled. Then prices crept up as militants taxed the road and shadow lenders skimmed an interest for risk. The same rail that paid a clinic's diesel refilled a parts bin labeled weather platform. The contradiction fit on a receipt. Micro stories brought the abstraction home. A mid-level operator at the fintech, Samia, noticed end-of-week spikes. Different shells, same memo, AE kit. He drafted a suspicious activity report. His boss told him the partner bank rated the client's low risk. Log it, month end. 2 days later, a warehouse 3 countries away paid cash for terrain mappers. And a week after that, a substation camera caught a swarm that flew like it had read the invoice. Pressure brushed in from capitals. Guidance notes warned banks to treat SPFS-linked messages with care, to watch for gold pledge euphemisms, equivalent value at a say, weight-based netting. Some tightened. Others offloaded volume to affiliates one hop removed from polite scrutiny. The flow flexed, phrasing changed, the weight stayed. Investigators learned the windows. Friday, 23:55 validations. Late Sunday reconciliations. Monday guarantees. They set tripwires under those ticks. Human review for pledge language. Secondary inspection for 8413 consignments booked by forwarders tied to last quarter's flows. Real-time pings when educational platform orders matched pledge references. It didn't break the rail, it bent it. The rail's power was always the same. Value without visibility, promises enforced by grams instead of quarts, timing tight enough that parts met jigs before anyone finished a memo. As long as messages moved faster than outrage, the engine breathed. The trick now was to make metadata move faster than both.